strange coincidences, a streak of bad luck that clings to you like a shadow. People you love suddenly turn cold. You tell yourself, it's nothing. Maybe you're just overthinking. But deep down, a voice whispers, what if you're not? What if these aren't just random misfortunes? What if they're signs? Subtle signals of something darker moving beneath the surface. This isn't about superstition or fear. This is about spiritual warfare. The kind that disguises itself in everyday patterns, invisible but deliberate, hidden behind smiles, masked by routine. Today, we expose it. The 5 most disturbing signs that you're under spiritual attack, and may not even know it. As Marcus Aurelius said, the first step is to see clearly. Let this be your first step. Let this be the moment you stop dismissing the signs and start reclaiming your power. Strange objects and unexplained arrangements. This is the moment where the invisible becomes physical, when what was once just a suspicion begins to take shape in the real world. You start to notice items out of place, objects you don't remember buying, small, seemingly harmless things tucked into corners, placed near thresholds, hidden under beds, slipped behind bookshelves. A coin you've never seen before resting by your door, a charm or trinket gifted to you by someone who no longer speaks your name with warmth, a plant that refuses to thrive, no matter how carefully you tend to it. At first, you brush it off. Maybe you dropped it. Maybe it was always there. But something about it feels wrong, heavy, off. That's not your imagination. That's your intuition, speaking quietly, but firmly. And if you've trained yourself in the Stoic way, you know better than to ignore signals that arrive wrapped in stillness. These objects, often dismissed as junk or coincidence, may in fact be carriers of intention. Spiritual interference often hides in the ordinary: string, ashes, dirt, glass, a torn photograph. To the untrained eye, they mean nothing, but to the spiritually attuned, they are instruments of energy, deliberate attempts to disrupt, to drain, to bind. Throughout history, spiritual attacks have used physical tokens to anchor negative energy. Modern witchcraft no longer needs fire circles and incantations. It thrives on subtlety, on placement, on proximity. Doorways are prime targets because every time you pass through them, energy moves. Your bedroom is another. That's where you're most vulnerable, unconscious, defenseless. And your car, because it carries your movement, your purpose, your forward momentum. If these objects show up in those spaces, it is not random. It is strategic. And the Stoic does not ignore the strategic movements of an enemy, visible or not. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." If something foreign appears in your space, your path is now to face it calmly, precisely, without panic. Do not touch suspicious items with your bare hands. Use gloves. Use tools. Remove them from your space with intention. Burn them if you must. Bury them far from where you live. Cleanse the area, whether with smoke, sound, or salt, not because of superstition, but because of sovereignty. When your space is compromised, your clarity is compromised. And clarity is not a luxury, it is a weapon. It is how you see the truth before it becomes a threat. These intrusions are not about the object, They're about access, influence, penetration, and once you allow them to remain, they begin to shift the energy around you, quietly, persistently, until you no longer feel at home in your own life. But here is your power: observation, discernment, and action. The Stoic warrior does not react in fear. He observes, he understands, and then he moves with controlled precision. If your space feels heavy, start walking it with presence. Feel every corner. Inspect every surface. Trust your instinct when something doesn't belong. You are not imagining the disturbance. You are recognizing the method, and in doing so, you are weakening its hold. This is not about paranoia. It's about protection. You are not afraid. You are aware. And with that awareness, you begin to reclaim your home, not just the one with walls, but the one within yourself. This is sign 3, a reminder that the enemy, when it cannot control your mind, will try to infiltrate your space. Your responsibility is not to fear it, but to see it, cleanse it, and guard what is yours with calm, steady vigilance. Unexplainable negative life patterns. This is the quiet storm, the kind that doesn't announce itself with thunder, but creeps in like a shadow at dusk. You begin to notice the shift, not through one massive failure, but through a steady stream of small, calculated disruptions. Things that once worked suddenly don't. Plans fall through. Communication breaks down. People you trust become distant, cold, or strangely hostile. You feel like you're constantly running uphill, yet you haven't changed direction. You haven't stopped working. You haven't let go of your discipline. But still, nothing flows. And deep down, something feels off. At first, you try to explain it. Maybe it's stress, burnout. Maybe the universe is just testing you. But the more you try to force things back into place, the more they fall apart. That's the first red flag. You're not just facing random misfortune. You're being strategically dismantled. Spiritual sabotage doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't come all at once. It shows up in patterns. A project fails right before launch. A new relationship collapses just as it begins to feel real. Your body starts to ache. Your thoughts become scattered. And all of it happens with uncanny timing, just as you're on the edge of progress, peace, or personal breakthrough. This is how modern witchcraft works. Not with fire and rituals in the woods, but through energy, intent, and precision. And it often comes through the people closest to you. That friend who started asking too many questions, that co-worker who gave you a strange gift, that family member whose presence always seems to leave you drained. The Stoics didn't write about spells or hexes, but they did speak of interference, distraction, obstruction, and most importantly, they taught the value of internal discipline when the external world grows hostile. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is that moment, that call to realization. You don't need to believe in witchcraft to feel its effects. You simply need to recognize that something is working against you, not openly, but with subtle, sustained precision. And you must respond not with panic, but with poise, not with emotion, but with clarity. Begin with observation. Look at when the disruptions began. Who was around you? What shifted in your environment? What new objects appeared in your home? What conversations left you feeling disoriented or drained? Start documenting everything: dates, changes, people, moods, dreams. The enemy thrives in confusion. Your strength is in pattern recognition. Don't fight fire with fire. Fight darkness with light. And light, in this case, is clarity. Once you see the web, you can step out of it. Once you understand the source of the chaos, you can fortify your mind against it. This is not about superstition. It's about sovereignty. It's about reclaiming dominion over your energy, your focus, your life. The worst thing you can do is normalize what you know is not normal. Stop calling it stress if it feels spiritual. Stop excusing betrayal if it feels orchestrated. The Stoic path is not about ignoring danger. It's about facing it without flinching. So, stand still. See clearly. Do not react. Begin to remove what weakens you and strengthen what centers you. Your breath, your discipline, your presence. That is where the healing begins. That is where the spiritual attack ends. And when the enemy realizes you're no longer blind, no longer chaotic, no longer easy to manipulate, it retreats, because it feeds on ignorance. And now, you're becoming aware. You're no longer the target. You are the observer, the strategist, the storm that cannot be moved. This is the first sign. And now, you've seen it. 3. Intuitive warnings and spiritual disturbances. This is the most silent of all attacks. And yet, the most powerful. It doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself through broken objects or failed relationships. It whispers in your gut, in your dreams, in the spaces where logic falls silent and your deeper knowing begins to speak. You walk into a room and feel the heaviness pressing against your chest. Even though nothing looks different, you see a familiar face and suddenly feel discomfort. Even though they smile as they always have, you sit in a place that once felt safe, and now it feels cold. Unfamiliar. Wrong. Your intuition begins to activate, not with panic, but with presence. A low, steady signal that something isn't right. And most of the world tells you to ignore it, to be rational, to brush it off. But a Stoic man understands intuition is not chaos. It is clarity. It is the body's way of speaking what the mind cannot yet comprehend. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But what happens when your thoughts begin to darken for no reason? When you feel watched, unsettled, disconnected from your spiritual practices, from your peace, from yourself. This is where the spiritual attack becomes internal. Not through outside events, but through your own perception. You begin to doubt yourself. You pull back from meditation, from prayer, from silence, because those very practices now feel blocked. You try to enter stillness, and instead, you find discomfort. That's not failure. That's interference. And it must be faced with calm, intelligent resistance. Begin to write down what you feel. Track the patterns. Pay attention to the nights when your dreams turn dark, when figures appear in sleep to chase you, to speak words you can't remember, but still feel in your bones. These are not just dreams, they are messages. Your spirit is alerting you that something unseen is trying to reach you, influence you, alter the direction of your life. And just because others can't see it doesn't mean it isn't real. You don't need validation from the blind to trust your own vision. The Stoics were not mystics, but they were not fools either. They knew that clarity is your strongest form of defense. And when clarity becomes compromised, it must be restored deliberately, methodically, without fear. If you feel darkness pressing into your spirit, do not run, do not deny. Cleanse your space. Use sound, smoke, salt, whatever aligns with your soul. Ground yourself daily. Visualize a barrier of light around your body before you step into the world. This is not superstition. This is strategic protection. And above all, do not speak of your plans to everyone. Spiritual attacks often gain strength through exposure. The Stoic man moves in silence, not because he is afraid, but because he understands the value of inner power guarded from outer interference. This is sign 3. The invisible assault, the intuitive disturbance, and it marks the point where your healing must come from within. No one can fight this battle for you, but no one can take your strength from you either. Not unless you hand it over. You've been given the warning. You've felt the shift. Now it's time to act, not with noise, but with unwavering presence. You do not need to convince anyone. You do not need to prove anything. You only need to trust what you know, see what you feel, and move forward with calm, grounded certainty. Your intuition is not an alarm to be silenced. It is a compass. Follow it, and you will always find your way back to peace, to power, to yourself. 4. Drastic changes in relationships. There comes a moment when the greatest pain is not caused by failure, or illness, or loss, but by the silence of someone you once trusted. A friend stops calling. A sibling grows cold. A partner turns distant without reason, without warning. Conversations that once brought laughter now feel loaded, tense, and short. The people you poured into suddenly look at you like a stranger, and the confusion is sharp because nothing happened. No fight, no betrayal, no cause that you can name. Just distance, just disconnection. And when you try to reach out, you're met with deflection, avoidance, or worse, accusation. You wonder if you're imagining things, but you're not. What you're experiencing is a fracture that was designed to weaken you, isolate you, and make you question everything you thought was solid. It is not accidental. It is targeted. And in the realm of spiritual warfare, this is one of the most devastating forms of attack, because it doesn't strike your mind or body, it strikes your heart. Spiritual attacks that aim to dismantle relationships do not break down walls with fire. They plant seeds. Seeds of doubt, suspicion, and distortion. They twist perceptions. They poison communication, and they do it with precision. A word taken the wrong way, a gesture misinterpreted, a conversation remembered differently. Suddenly, you're the villain in a story you don't even recognize. You're defending yourself against accusations that seem to come from nowhere, and those who once stood beside you now drift away, pulled by an invisible tide. That's not human conflict. That's energetic manipulation. That's the mark of interference. And if you've lived long enough with eyes open, you've felt it. The eerie sense that something or someone is influencing how others see you without your knowledge and without your consent. The Stoics prepared us for this. They taught us that human opinion is out of our control, but our internal state, our judgment, our virtue, our discipline is always within our command. Epictetus said, "Other people's views are not your concern. Stay focused on your own character. And in moments like this, that wisdom becomes your anchor. You do not chase. You do not beg. You do not compromise your peace to explain yourself to those unwilling to listen. Instead, you observe. You withdraw your energy. You begin to track the timeline. When did the shift begin? Who entered your circle? What changed in your environment? In your routines? In your energy? The patterns are never random. A new group, a new gift, a sudden influx of attention that quickly turned into confusion. That's the method. Spiritual manipulation often enters through relationships that seem harmless, charming faces, flattering words, gifts that feel light but carry a heavy cost. And once these items or connections are in place, the unraveling begins. Slowly, strategically, until you're left standing alone, wondering what happened. But solitude is not your enemy. It is your fortress. It is where you recover, where you listen, where you reclaim. Begin by cleansing not just your home, but your connections. Sit in silence. Feel who strengthens you and who drains you. Kutis, not in anger, but in clarity. Return every gift that feels heavy. Remove every object tied to the time of decline. If someone's presence brings more confusion than peace, that is not your tribe. That is not your path. The Stoic path is not one of popularity, it is one of truth. And truth often requires you to stand alone, to let go of the false, so that the real can find its way back. This is sign 4, the erosion of connection, the engineered isolation. And your task is not to repair what was broken, it is to see it clearly. Step back without resentment, and rise in stillness. The ones who left may have been part of the attack, or they may return when the fog clears. But your mission remains the same. Protect your peace, preserve your clarity, and walk forward with a heart that is guarded not by walls, but by wisdom. When you no longer need others to validate your truth, you have become immovable. That is Stoic strength. That is spiritual sovereignty. And that is how you rise, not by holding on, but by letting go with dignity, with power, and with silence that speaks louder than any defense. 5. Unusual physical and emotional symptoms. When you're under a spiritual attack, the first battlefield is often your body, not because it is the most vulnerable, but because it is the most immediate. The symptoms begin slowly. You wake up exhausted even after a full night of rest. You feel sluggish, unmotivated, like your energy is being drained from you, not just emotionally, but physically. Tasks that once felt simple now feel overwhelming. Your limbs grow heavy. Your chest tightens. Breathing feels shallow. And there's a weight, an invisible burden that sits on your shoulders, dragging your spirit down with every step you take. You try to shake it off. You drink more water. You adjust your diet. You take supplements. Try exercise. Increase your sleep. But nothing touches it. The exhaustion isn't physical, it's energetic. And no matter how many hours you rest, you wake up just as tired, if not more. And then, the emotional shift begins. You start to cry without knowing why. Joy fades from your days like sunlight behind a thick, grey cloud. You feel hollow, disconnected, as if you're walking through life without really being here. Anxiety appears without trigger. Fear shows up in places that once brought peace. You become sensitive to noises, to people, to emotions. You startle easily. You feel watched, even when alone. And most confusing of all, your sacred spaces, your bedroom, your meditation corner, your altar suddenly feel uncomfortable. Like something unwelcome has taken residence there. You no longer find rest where you once found refuge. That's not a mood swing. That's a signal. Your spirit is trying to warn you before your mind can explain it. You reach out for help. Doctors, therapists, coaches, they run the tests. Check the vitals. Ask the questions. Everything appears fine on paper. Maybe it's just stress. They say, maybe you need time off. But your body knows better. So does your intuition. There's a presence, a heaviness, a subtle disturbance you can't name but feel everywhere. This is not imagined. It's not weakness. It's not hysteria. It is the unseen weight of spiritual interference, and it must be taken seriously. Witchcraft in the modern world has changed form. It doesn't need fire or ritual or ceremony. It only needs focused intent and access to your energy. A cursed object placed in your home, a charm given to you by someone whose smile hid envy, a conversation that left you emotionally shredded and spiritually exposed. These are the new tools of spiritual warfare. Silent, hidden, and effective. They bypass your logic and go straight for your inner compass. They shake your sense of peace. They disturb your emotional center. They cloud your mental clarity. The Stoics may not have spoken of hexes or dark energy, but they understood the principle. Epictetus wrote, "When something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it." And when your own attitude begins to shift without cause, when your inner fire grows dim, your thoughts darken, your feelings become erratic, then you must consider the possibility that the cause is not internal, but imposed. You're not losing control. You're under Ziga, and it's time to respond with clarity, not confusion. Begin by listening, not to the noise outside, but to the signals inside. Keep a journal. Note the times when your energy crashes, the dreams that disturb your sleep, the places in your home that now feel cold or tense. Pay attention to who was around you before this shift began, who came close. What did they leave behind? And what did you start feeling afterward? Cleansing rituals, smoke, salt, sound are not superstition. They are sacred acts of reclaiming territory. Your territory, your space, your peace. Begin to take your power back, one layer at a time. Remove what drains you. Reclaim what grounds you. Clean your space, not just physically, but energetically. Speak over it. Bless it. Protect it. This is not about fear. It's about defense. Strategic, intelligent, grounded defense. And above all, stay silent, where silence strengthens you. Do not argue with those who mock your intuition. Do not seek validation from those who are blind to energy. You do not need permission to protect your spirit. The Stoic man defends his peace not with noise, but with mastery. He sharpens his awareness. He observes without flinching. And when the invisible becomes visible, he moves with precision. This is sign 4. The silent theft of your vitality, the unseen disturbance of your inner weather. If you feel it, believe it, and then rise to meet it with unwavering calm, with sharpened awareness, and with the steady power of a soul that refuses to be owned by anything outside of itself. This is not the end. This is your awakening. If even one of these signs has stirred something in you, a memory, a feeling, a pattern you can no longer ignore, then trust that awareness, because the greatest danger of a spiritual attack is not the damage it causes, it's the silence it operates in. The moment you see it, name it, and stand against it, the power it held begins to break. You are not powerless. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are becoming aware, and that awareness is the foundation of strength. The Stoics taught us that we may not control what happens around us, but we always control how we respond. This is your time to respond with clarity, with calm, with deliberate presence. Cleanse your space. Guard your thoughts. Move in silence. And choose your circle with intention. Protect what is sacred. And when you feel the heaviness return, don't panic. Pause. Observe. Then act. Not with fear, but with firm. Unwavering resolve. You are not here to be manipulated. You are not here to be drained. You are here to rise above all that seeks to pull you down. This is your reminder, your awakening, your call to power. Protect your peace, defend your energy, and carry yourself like a man who knows that his silence is not emptiness but strength. Not retreat, but control. Not fear, but mastery. You are not falling apart. You are being refined. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and above all, stay aware.